Good afternoon and welcome to this edition of KTN Newsdesk. My name is Edith Kimani. I trust you've had a good morning. Let's have a look at some of the top stories this afternoon. Out of mind and buried, there's a man who has held a symbolic burial for his wife who deserted him. We have all the stories here. Also, we're asking, guilty or not? Remember the chief who took his daughters for circumcision? Well, he's been arraigned in court. Not my money. The interesting story of an Indian national who's eaten up gold to evade the taxman. All these and more coming your way shortly. Welcome to the program. Health Cabinet Secretary James Macharia is urging Parliament to speed up legislation that will pave way for cheaper importation and distribution of malaria drugs countrywide. Speaking in Nairobi to mark World Malaria Day, the Cabinet Secretary said malaria remains the country's leading killer disease, yet it can easily be treated. The proposed drug procurement bill by Senate Majority Leader Kindiki Kithure has already been tabled in the Senate but is yet to be debated.
And when the Senate proposed the planned Cancer bill, I think to answer the ministry, that was extremely encouraging. But also it was extremely discouraging when we found that some senators within the Senate were opposing that bill. Because with a devolved system, once again, I'll repeat, we shall be exposing our population to significant risks if we do not control the way drugs are purchased. You know, historically we had up to 30% of counterfeit, of all drugs being counterfeit coming to this country. And that's a risk we cannot afford. Now, if every county is going to procure their own drugs, you will be exposing this country to risk which will result in death. And that is a risk which us as a ministry we cannot really live by. And we like to state very categorically that we would like to support that bill. We would like to request the Senate to accelerate that bill, because by doing so, we shall have control over how drugs are procured.
A man in Kakamega shocked his neighbors by burying his wife and 2 children symbolically after she left him and refused to come back home. Now, the young man who wanted to forget his family and marry another woman, however, was forced to dig up the grave and remove the symbolic banana tubers.
Residents of Ilesi village near Kakamega's famous Crying Stone were shocked by the 29-year-old's decision to perform a symbolic burial of his wife and 2 children as a way of forgetting them. As they flocked Anthony Lihanda's compound, they strongly condemned the bizarre incident.
Nilisikia simu kutoka kwa dada zao. Ati yuko mahali analia karibu saa 8 ya usiku. Atataka kujinyonga.
The incident occurred during the Easter celebrations after Lihanda dug a 9-foot grave and buried a large tuber representing the wife and 2 other small ones to symbolize the children who had left with their mother.
Mjaribu juu chini mbembeleza ili arudi. Mali kama kutakuwa na shida angalau aambie pia watu. Ingawaje alikuwa tu kunidanganya. Kuja kesho nitakuambia siku.
Lihanda said that he consulted several elders in Mombasa and Ukambani who advised him to perform the ritual.
Nilikuwa nishamueleza nitakufanyia kitu ambapo hata mimi mwenyewe sitafurahia, ama watu wa area ama watu wa kwetu hawatafurahia. Na nikifanya hivyo ujue mimi nawe imeisha.
The area chief said it was a bad omen and traditions demand that the entire family should be cleansed by slaughtering a black sheep and a black hen to stop abomination that might befall the family. Najma Ismail, KTN.
The Kenya Aviation Workers Union are demanding to be recognized by Trade Winds Aviation Services as a union on its own. Now, they say that because of the lack of acknowledgement, the workers affiliated with them have been working under very poor conditions and very little pay, and they have no union to front their issues. What they are doing is threatening to down their tools next week on 30th if their demands are not met.
And we feel that that is a right that belongs to workers. That is a right that belongs to us, the union, that if an employee has voluntarily, out of his free will, offered to associate with the Kenya Aviation Workers Union, an employer has no option but to recognize us. We've made several attempts, we've written several letters to them. Sometimes they don't even bother to respond to our letters, and whenever they do, we feel that the response is insufficient. And that is the reason why we've decided today to issue a strike notice in compliance to section 76.1 of the Labor Relations Act.
A chief in Narok County who was arrested last week for allegedly allowing his daughters to undergo circumcision was arraigned in court facing 3 different counts. Chief Lekishon Muriaso was accused of allowing his 2 daughters to undergo female genital mutilation, allowing FGM to take place in his homestead, and for failure to report on occurrence of FGM in his homestead, contrary to Anti-FGM Act of 2011. The chief was released on a cash bill of 50,000 shillings. The hearing date for the case has been set for the 2nd of May 2014, when the 2 girls are expected to testify against their father. Well, we're following up on that story on the 2nd of May when the girls are expected to be in court. We'll certainly be there and bring you the story. Elsewhere, pressure is piling for African leaders to step in and assist in the war-torn South Sudanese country. The United Nations has warned that a recent attack killing 58 civilians would constitute a war crime. KTN's Ashamwilu has the details.
Bodies splattered along the streets. The smell of death and devastation is in the air. A new wave of violence in Bentiu State has left tens of civilians dead. The United Nations reported one of the most shocking attacks since the conflict began. Unarmed civilians at a mosque, a church, and a hospital were killed along ethnic lines. For those who survived the vicious attacks, life is barely bearable. There is no water, no food. Children forced to queue hours in search of clean water. Every now and then, singing will erupt, deep in remote areas of the crisis-torn South Sudan. But these are not happy songs. It's the sound of war. In Bentiu, Nuers, who have refused to join in celebrating the death of Dinkas, have also been killed. Young men, even children, are now increasingly joining the White Army affiliated with the Nuer tribe.
Regardless of how long it takes, even if it takes 10 years, I will defeat them. We are not brothers because of what they have done. Your brother will not kill you. They are killing even girls.
Some of these child soldiers or some of these young boys are very bitter because they lost some of their relatives. Fathers were killed, mothers were killed, and as a result, they decided to take up arms to carry out revenge on government forces.
The rebels, led by Riek Machar, have denied killing any civilians in Bentiu. President Salva Kiir's government says they're still pursuing the rebels who are in control of 2 key states in South Sudan. The fighting broke out in the world's youngest state late last year after President Kiir accused his former deputy Machar of plotting a coup. So far, thousands have been killed and more than 1 million displaced from their homes. Ashamwilu, KTN.
Very shocking images coming from South Sudan, and this is happening just a day after meteorologists said that South Sudan could experience a devastating drought in May if the rains don't come. We'll obviously be keeping tabs on that story and bringing you all the developments. Back home though, a new cervical cancer scanner has been launched in Kenya. Now the makers of the scanner, called Luviva, say it gives results just seconds after a person takes a cervical cancer test. And as KTN's Habiba Ali reports, the Ministry of Health is also promising to do more for women when it comes to the fight against the disease.
and you can put in as much.
The new technology is now in Kenya to enhance the early detection of cervical cancer.
Where they're going, and the cervical guide is inserted through.
Luviva cervical cancer scans has so far been used in 26 countries around the world. Kenya is the second country in Africa to embrace this technology after Nigeria.
As a new technology, we still need to do a lot of advocacy. And all the women that have done it, that have undergone the screening so far, they've come to realize that this is a better option. And I can tell you that Luviva has bypassed the hitherto screening procedure of a pap smear.
Additional tests are necessary.
According to World Health Organization reports, every year about 2,454 women in Kenya are diagnosed with cervical cancer, while 1,676 of them die from the disease.
Luviva is designed to go all over the world. It's designed to be used in the country and in the cities, so that the same level of health care is provided to all women everywhere where Luviva is used.
Complex algorithm. The manufacturers say that Luviva, compared to other scanners in use for cervical cancer, produces immediate results, requires no tissue sample, and is portable. They also say the machine does not cause any pain on the person being tested. The manufacturers, Guided Therapeutics, and distributors, Thermal Enterprises, launched Luviva here in Nairobi late last evening.
I want to implore all governmental organizations, non-governmental organizations, and even private practitioners to embrace this wonderful technology because it is a way out. Cervical cancer should not be seen killing women again.
Cervical cancer is considered a friendly cancer because of the fact that it grows slowly over time, giving women ample time to go for testing. On their part, the Minister of Health has promised some good news for ladies come January 2015.
We want to introduce cervical cancer vaccine in January 2015. We had intended to do this in July, but in July we want to introduce another vaccine for children, the rotavirus vaccine, and the logistics of doing dual introduction were just too heavy.
Cervical cancer is the second most common cancer afflicting women globally. World Health Organization reports have indicated that more than 10 million women in the country are at risk of developing cervical cancer. But with this new technology, the risks are expected to grow lower. Habiba Ali, KTN.
Got to love technology and its impact in the field of health. Elsewhere, the Court of Appeal sitting in Nairobi has nullified the election of Garissa County Governor Nadif Jama and ruled the poll was not free and fair. The court further said the High Court should have ordered the scrutiny of votes. Now, the appeal was filed by the petitioners Abdi Karim Osman Mohammed and Sahal Nuno after the High Court dismissed their case in September of last year and upheld Jama's election. Now, the Court of Appeal has reversed the High Court ruling. Jama's opponents are currently celebrating in the streets of Garissa, and of course, more details can be found in our subsequent bulletins, including the 4 p.m. Kiswahili bulletin. On that note, we take a short commercial break, and when we come back, I'd like you to have an answer for this. What would you do to evade the taxman? Would you swallow gold? A man did that in India. We have all the details. Welcome back to KTN Newsdesk. Before we tell you about that man in India, let's have a look at the business. And all unregistered contractors in the country have been put on notice by the National Construction Authority. This follows the passing of the deadline for all contractors in the country to register with the authority. So far, only 20,000 contractors ended up in the authority's database, and Philip Keitani has more on this report.
Scenes such as these have characterized the local construction industry in the recent past, largely blamed on unqualified construction companies. In the last couple of years, Kenya has seen a number of buildings collapse. Some of these include a building in Kisii which collapsed in January 2009, one in Kiambu in October 2009, and the infamous Kehonge building on River Road, which collapsed on the 26th January 2006. This has resulted in loss of lives as well as stalled development forcing the government to take drastic measures instituting statutory requirements developers will have to meet before they are allowed to operate. It is on this basis that the National Construction Authority has come up with a raft of regulations that are expected to ensure that all players in the industry are well qualified and operates within the same rules. So far, the authority has registered 20,000 constructors that it says will be allowed to conduct construction jobs within the country. The rules will be subjected to foreign contractors operating in the country as the authority seeks to weed out contractors without necessary qualifications to carry out projects. The authority says all letters of registration issued on or before December 31st, 2013 will no longer be valid from next month, with contractors expected to get new registration. Construction companies found to be contravening the regulations risk imprisonment or fine not exceeding 1 million shillings. Philip Ketan, KTN Business.
And this is on the back of that story that tomorrow Boni Tunya, my co-anchor, will be talking to Neville Tridande about a Build Expo. You don't want to miss that conversation, so do stay tuned tomorrow. Nairobi County has announced that it will allocate 25% of its annual budget to improve communication, connectivity and infrastructure for the next 3 years, starting July of this year. Now, the county also requires all new commercial buildings coming up in the county to have inbuilt communication termination services, and the old ones should comply within a deadline of 6 months. This comes as Orange Telecom plans to connect 200 buildings in Nairobi to its latest fiber optic infrastructure by the end of this year. Orange has invested 1.4 billion shillings in the multi-services access nodes, which the company says will significantly cut its operational expenditure due to reduced vandalism.
Communication termination becomes a utility just like water and like electricity. And we did announce, and you'll recall from December 2013, that all new building submissions must have communication termination inbuilt, and that's a condition for approval. And 2 months ago we met and we've agreed that within the next 6 months, even all the old buildings will be required to upgrade and have communication terminations built in and connected to the networks.
Today we are around 20 to 30 per month, mainly from, let's say, road contractors. Why I think what you saw it in the press last week about Telkom are looking to organize with Minister of Road about the cable collocation is high. It is great for us. And Telkom during the last 5 years, we had big impact in terms of customers and in terms of quality and image. And today I think with this project, our quality become great. And we could repair very quick, like I told you in presentation, we could repair a cable between 6 to 8 hours, and we could guarantee 99.5% quality.
Let's have a look at what's happening in the region. And the fishing village of Kasencero, that's on the shores of Lake Victoria, is where HIV/AIDS was first discovered in Uganda. Its transient population of fishermen and sex workers means the country's nationwide program to combat the virus has had little impact there. Here's more on the story.
2 months ago, Shayla moved to the small fishing village of Kasencero, taking a room close to the bars alongside most of the town's sex workers. Set on the banks of Lake Victoria, this is where Uganda's first case of AIDS was discovered back in 1980. Though Shayla remains negative, her mother and sister and many of her colleagues are living with HIV. With an average 5 clients a day, she worries about how long she can stay free of the virus.
I have a friend of mine who used the man. After having sex, pulling out the condom, the man had blood coming out. So why is it kind of disease? I don't know.
Fishermen make up the majority of Shayla's clients. Returning from the lake at dawn, most of the men sell their catch before taking their profits straight to the bar, and the women who hang out there. 43% of this population of a few thousand people live with HIV, more than 6 times higher than the rest of Uganda. Dr. Cato Francis blames the startling rate of infection on the high demand for commercial sex.
Being a fishing ground, we have many people flocking in for sexual activities. Yeah, basically it's around commercial sexual worker.
Kasansera's vibrant local economy draws people from all over Uganda and its neighboring countries, including a steady stream of sex workers. Despite a national program providing free access to antiretroviral medicines, the transience of its population and the live-for-today mentality of the fishermen are hurdles to providing regular and effective treatment. Storms are frequent on Lake Victoria. Few of the fishermen can swim, and none of them wear life jackets aboard their rickety boats.
So despite the fact that they go into the lake, it's so risky and everything, so when they get back, they want to spend their money the way they want. They're like, let's spend their money, after all, the next day one can die. So they don't have those future plans.
When AIDS first came to Kasansera more than 3 decades ago, no one knew what it was or how to treat it, even though that knowledge is available today. The culture of risk and the women and alcohol that accompany it leave many with a devil-may-care approach to preventing the disease.
Well, this is where we wind up this edition of KTN Newsdesk. My name is Edith Kimani. Thank you for staying tuned. Remember, the website to check out is www.standardmedia.co.ke. You can also get all the videos that we show you on there, including archived ones that you might have missed out on. Right now, though, let's have a look at the Did You Know fact. And it comes from 2005. Did you know in 2005, the United Nations deemed Scotland the most violent country in the developed world? Can you imagine that? I know, it's not a very good one. Tomorrow I'll have a better one. But my name is Edith Kimani. Do stay tuned for more news on KTN. And remember to log on to Twitter and follow at KTN Kenya. Good afternoon.